Yeah. So,
Serbia.
Serbia, I actually didn't know that Serbia has a large deposit of lithium,
Yeah.
so which make it even more complicated. But anyway, so the Chinese media said that all that's going on in Serbia is George Soros is behind it.
Yeah.
Now, I also read recently that George Soros is banned in Russia, Pakistan, Turkey, Hungary, Poland, and the Philippines, apparently. But then somebody debunked that, saying that's not true, that's not true. But nonetheless, I feel like George Soros is a person that is utterly dangerous. And can you talk a little bit about last time we talked about Paul Wolfowitz being the deep state person, and I
Yeah.
think Soros is like that, and plus he's also globalist, right? So what is
Yeah.
your
My envy about Soros is that I mean, Wolfowitz obviously functioned within the US
Mhm,
government. Soros, what he does, what he's been about, is that he has been instrumental in projecting American power.
mhm,
Now, there are a lot of uncertainties and mysteries about Soros, and I'm not going to try and unpack them myself. But what basically happened was that back in the 1970s, there was a series of investigations in the United States of the CIA and what it had been up to because of all kinds of scandals
mhm,
that had emerged in the 1960s and early 1970s. And the operations of the CIA were supposed to be scaled down.
mhm,
But what in practice happened was that the CIA continued to operate in exactly the same way that as it had done before, but started increasingly to use various private agencies and individuals as cover for the things that it was doing. And in fact, because a lot of it was done purportedly by these private entities and individuals, the ultimate result of the changes that happened in the 1970s is that this covert activity exploded in scale
mhm.
because it happens outside the regulatory arm of the US government and of the courts and things of that kind. So the rules, the law may say that the CIA can do this, but it can't do that, it can't do something else. But it doesn't say that George Soros and his
Mhm.
Open Society Foundation cannot do these things. So I think that in ways that has never been fully explained, Soros does what the intelligence people in Washington want him to. I think he's absolutely a part of the political state of the United States. And I think that this is a guess now. I may be
Mhm.
completely wrong. I may
Mhm.
be doing the man an injustice, but I think in return they've given him, they're giving continuous tips about developments in world markets and things of that kind. And that's one of the reasons why he's grown. He's achieved so much wealth. So he gets paid back in that way.
Mhm. Well, that that kind of explains because I always wondered that he seems like a businessman, a banker or investor or what have you.
Mm.
But very deeply involved in different countries' politics, right? Through his open society. And
Yes.
kind of like a color revolution one after another. It seems like he's always there somehow. But that's probably makes sense. Yeah.
I'm going to add something else, which is the fact that he calls his thing, the Open Society
Exactly.
Foundation and all of that, is itself an alarm bell because
Hmm.
that originates from a book that was written by a British philosopher called Karl Popper back in the early 1950s, entitled The Open Society and Its Enemies, which is supposed to be a discussion of philosophers. Yeah, Popper was himself a philosopher. And he basically divides all the philosophers into good guys and bad guys. So, Plato is a bad guy, and Aristotle is a bad guy, and Socrates is a good guy, and I, Karl Popper, obviously am a good guy. Hegel is a bad guy, and Marx, he's very bad. So, I mean, he does that, and he created this concept of the open society, which there's no real definition of,
Hmm.
but everybody throughout history is either supports it or opposes it, and they're the enemies, and we're the people who promote it. So it is fairly well known, at least I mean, that the people who funded that book were the CIA.
Mm.
So just saying. So I mean, already that traces you back to an event. It was a Cold War. It was done during the Cold War. It was basically an anti-communist, anti-Soviet book, anti-Marxist book. It sought basically to discredit Marxism by suggesting that it was opposed to this wonderful thing called the open society. The CIA was heavily involved in doing that kind of thing back then. I mean, it was trying to develop a kind of intellectual front, a front of intellectuals against Marxism. And it looks to me as if one, CIA project is operating on the back of another CIA project. So the United States, as I said, is responsible. The CIA is responsible for this whole open society concept. And one of their, well, let's not call him an agent, but somebody who is close to them comes along and promotes it on their behalf in the different conditions of today.
I'm just thinking like Serbia. I mean, the West already see it as some kind of a, they don't like Serbia. They don't like Vučić, even though he's very popular with his own people.
Yeah.
But having this large deposit of lithium, I think, can make it even more complicated. Isn't it true? Like having a rich natural resource, it can be a curse, isn't it?
I didn't know, by the way, about the lithium in Serbia, so thank you for that. But no, I think it is a huge curse. It's one of the reasons why there's been this very unhealthy interest in Ukraine, for example.
Yeah. And the Middle East,
and the Middle East and Russia.
Yeah.
I mean, Russia with its enormous natural resources. Now, Madeleine Albright always denied that she ever said that it was, wrong that Russia should have such an overabundance of natural resources and that they needed to be shared around more equitably. She always said that she never said that, but I've heard others who insist that she did.
Why does she have such a hatred towards Serbia? Remember when she was signing a book in an event, there were some people come and protest her. Nowhere showing that they're Serbians or any nationality or anything, but she just like, oh, those Serbs, Why does she have so much hatred towards Serbia? I don't.
Well, that is a very, very good question. I mean, a lot of people explain it as, that Madeleine Albright is of Jewish origin. Her family came from Czechoslovakia. She was very affected by the history of the Holocaust. There was a lot of criticism of Serbia in the 90s, very unfair criticism, that they were engaging in genocide and doing all those things. Notice that the same people who accused Serbia of genocide insist that Israel is not committing genocide. But anyway, let's not get into sidetrack with all of that today. So a lot of people are saying that she saw the Serbs as the sequel to the Nazis. Now, there may be some truth in that, in Albright's own mental world, about which I'm not particularly well informed. But fundamentally, the reason is because she's a neocon. American neocons insist that every country in the world must follow American orders. Serbia doesn't follow American orders, and that's enough for them to hate these countries.
And going back to the natural resource thing, one thing I just remembered, like, Lu Xun, right? Lu Xun wrote about the Qing dynasty. So what he was saying, the downfall of Qing dynasty is not because Qing dynasty was poor. At the time, I think Qing dynasties, if we're talking about GDP, probably has 1/3 of the world GDP or something. What he was saying is that if you are rich, whether you're rich in with all the gold and silver or natural resource, whatever you're rich with, you better be strong, because the Qing dynasty was rich, but it's not strong. So when you are rich, you are basically a big fat lamb to be slaughtered and eaten. If you are rich, you better be a wolf or a tiger. You can defend yourself. You need to
Yeah.
do that. You can't just be rich, right? That's what's going on, right? Still going on, I think, in the world today.
Absolutely. Well, that's why China is developing sixth generation fighter jet, because
Yeah.
I don't think that this is the natural inclination of the Chinese people. As
Hmm.
I've said many times, if you know your Chinese history,
Hmm.
China is a civilization very predisposed to peace. It
Hmm.
is.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
history has taught them that you can't make assumptions about that others in this world think as you do or
Mm,
want things as you do. And when you're dealing with a society like the United States, I mean, they are endlessly belligerent, and that's the reality.
mhm, yeah.